Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are excited to have you join us for our third session in the 2025 Tennessee Farmers Market Vendor Bootcamp webinar series. We welcome back Matt LeRoux, Matt LeRoux with us from Cornell University to share some deeper insights into uh, helping increase customer spending at farmers market using your own data. So I look forward to hearing what Matt has to say here. A couple of ground rules, a reminder, we're on some limited bandwidth, especially in certain areas of the state. So we'll keep our video off and mics off as well, except for Matt. And please use the chat box to put any questions that you have throughout the session in there, and I'll try to monitor that and break in to get those to Matt as we go along. Matt, thank you so much for joining us again today, and we look forward to your wisdom that you have to share with us.
Thanks. Again, I'm really glad to be here, and I hope folks that are on here today were able to join us on Tuesday, because this is really follow-on information. So it's good to have that base of what we discussed on Tuesday. And I'll also just add, I don't know what the impact will be exactly, but I'm even more sick than I was on Tuesday. So I don't know if that's going to cloud my brain um, or what. But now, can I just confirm, Megan, are you just getting the slide? Did I share it correctly?
I think we're seeing the presenter view.
Oh, okay. Just give me a moment. Let me fix that.
No problem. It's always tricky to get the right screen to pop up.
How about now? Now you just get the slide?
We do.
All
Perfect.
right.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm glad I got to do these two sessions so you can see the interrelatedness of that. Last time was just this messaging about how to improve your marketing and ultimately your sales by understanding your consumer. And now I'm going to talk about data, but how this data really teaches you what your customer wants and how it impacts their spending. I guess I'm a little bit of a numbers nerd, being in the Department of Applied Economics at Cornell's Ag School. And so this is the data set of my dreams. I actually wrote the grant to do this research project and begin collecting this data that I'm going to share with you. And ultimately, we were looking for ways to improve sales at farmers markets, and that's what we're going to, get at with the results from data analysis. So in earlier research I had done, we had assessed the way different market channels perform. So we looked at farmers markets compared to, fruit and vegetable CSAs, compared to roadside stands, and wholesaling to restaurants and grocery stores. And when we looked at each individual farm's assessment and comparing their channels, often farmers market was the poorest performing channel. So that just means that for the number of dollars in sales that the farmers market channel could produce in a given week, it was taking a lot of hours. So relative to, let's say, a wholesale channel where you're getting orders from your customers, let's say you do a delivery route to restaurants, you could you could deliver a lot more dollars in product in a short delivery route to a wholesale customer than you could at a farmers market. But that's not to say that farmers markets don't have other value. In fact, when I was presenting on that research back then, and that was the conclusion from the data, was that across these farmers markets tended to be the poorest performing channel that those farms were using. By the way, CSA, it was typically the best. Any farm that was using a CSA, for them, it was the top performing channel, and wholesale also performed strongly. Um, but I was presenting on that a lot, and someone at a conference read my name badge, and they said, "Oh, I recognize your name. You're the guy who hates farmers markets," which which couldn't be further from the truth. Um, I think farmers markets offer a lot of value that we weren't capturing just by looking at hours and dollars, and that's things like recruiting new customers. Getting new customers that you direct to your other channels. They discover you at the farmer's market, get a relationship with you. Now they're joining your CSA, shopping at your farm store. Maybe even you're meeting a chef who's going to start ordering for their restaurant. Farmers markets are valuable for customer feedback. Customers will tell you how they like stuff. I always think about eggplants. Customers will come to the farmers market and say, I don't like it when the eggplants are that big, right? You're really getting important feedback and understanding your consumer. And there's other things that come out of farmers markets that offer a lot of value. So that makes the research question that we have, how can we increase sales at farmers markets knowing that they offer value? And what are the measurable factors that influence customer spending? Because if we study them, there's an opportunity to increase sales. And what we really, really want to know with our research question is it possible in those same number of hours that you're already going to be at market to get more dollars out of it? And if we can, then we're naturally improving the performance of farmers markets. So where are the growth opportunities if we're looking to get more money out of our market? Well, we're going to think about our average daily gross sales, and that's really comprised of the average number of customers that shop with you at a market multiplied by the average customer spend, or we're going to call it customer transaction size. So we can look at ways to improve the day by looking at these two factors. One would be to get more customers. If we can increase customer counts but maintain the same average customer spend, we're still going to make more money, right? Look at the multiplication sign there. Or if we keep getting the same number of customers but we're able to find ways to get them to spend more money, once again, we're going to have better average daily gross sales. But I want to plug into this understanding the consumer, like we talked about in the first session. If we want to factor that in when we're looking for ways to increase customer counts and customer spending. So the way that we went about this research, and we piloted it originally in 2018, um, was to use a point of sale system, because here is this opportunity to get data collection at a farmer's market very easily. If you're not familiar with POS, point of sale, the most commonly used one is called Square, but there's others like Clover and Toast and PayPal, and there's a bunch out there. POS is an app that collects sales data. It's basically a cash register app, or you could think of it like a grocery store scanner. You're going to record all the items in each customer transaction, and therefore you have the data. In the case of Square, which is the one that we use for our research, it's a screen of squares on the screen. When a customer wants to buy those items, you just touch those squares, it adds it to the order. And like I said, it's really an awesome opportunity for passive data collection. When you use this app and you set it up accordingly, you're creating a very rich and detailed data set without the sort of burden of heavy duty record keeping, because it all just happens so quickly. Then you can export that data, in the case of Square, into both a transactions report and an items report, and both of those have all the detail. And yet, I already described how you can ring up a customer. So I want to point out, originally, like especially back in 2018, a lot of the farmers up here viewed it really just as a credit card machine. So they didn't program their items. They really just would run a credit card, and otherwise it would be sitting idle. But for our research, we had farms record every single transaction and program all their items. So even a cash transaction. And when you do record a cash transaction, there's no fee because there's no processing. So you can get free data collection out of an app like Square when you record cash transactions. When you do this, you get a data set. Okay, most PO systems quickly collect price, quantity, and unit for each item. So if it's sold by weight or sold by the eaches include bunches, bags, quarts, pints, right? Those are things that are just priced by the each, but that can also do variable weight items like meat or vegetables that you want to sell by the pound. It gives you the customer's transaction total or customer transaction size, and then it gives a time and date stamp on the transaction. You can use that to infer where you were, so the location, but you can also set up locations in the app, in which case it tells you, by name, the name that you gave it, what location you were at, and then the payment method, whether it was credit card, cash, or other. And a lot of them systems are accepting things like Apple Pay and Google Pay. So it'll tell you how the customer paid. And then you can export this and you can work with your own data. If you're into using Excel, if this is the data set of your dreams and you've been just waiting, then you can export all of it into Excel and you can do a lot with it. You can use it. I think you can sort of hack a POS system to serve other record keeping purposes, such as, if you sell a lot at farmers markets and you know how many pounds of eggplant you sold, that could be a proxy for harvest records, right? Or you could at least say, hey, we think 60% of all the eggplants we grew went through the farmers market. Look at the total pounds of eggplant for the season, what that went through the farmers market in your POS data, and now you have an estimate of how many pounds you yielded for the year. You can also program in different staff, and then you can track their sales performance. And not to say that you would look at the lowest performing staff person and say, what are you doing wrong? But you might look at who's doing really well with sales and then ask them to give advice to, other people working for you. And yeah, if you can learn Excel pivot tables, they're actually really easy to learn. They're very simple. I'm sure there's great videos on YouTube, but Excel pivot tables summarize large amounts of data very quickly, and you can once you learn how to play with them, they're really simple, and the results can be really meaningful. So with our research, what we observed was customer transaction size. Just want to check here. Okay. Customer transaction size, the time of the purchase. So some farmers markets begin at 8 a.m. and some begin at 3 in the afternoon. And so what we do is we code each hour of the market, meaning first hour, second hour, third hour. So we looked at that, the payment type, how customers are paying, the items and quantities in the shopping basket, the market size, meaning how many vendors are at that market, um, and we looked at that for both directly competing vendors. So when we're studying vegetable producers, we look at how many other primarily vegetable vendors were at that market, but we also looked at the total count of vendors. And then customer density, which is a concept I'll introduce in a few slides, but it has to do with how busy you are when you're at that market. And the old adage among ag economists is actually you can't improve what you don't measure. And I just took their saying and made it positive. The reason we're going to collect data to try to improve daily sales at the farmers market is because we believe that once you begin to create metrics on your performance, then you can brainstorm ways to improve. So we're going to look at things like customer counts, both per hour and per day. We're going to look at customer transaction size in terms of how much customers are spending, but also how many items they're buying. Both are metrics that we can work to improve. Daily gross sales, the average item value for the items that we're offering to our customers. And then we can look at the popularity of certain items. So item sales in terms of, individual item sales in terms of dollars of sales and the number of units that we're moving. And here's a summary of what we observed. This is at farmers markets all around New York State. So it is, it's a different state, but in many ways it's probably not that different than your area. So this is just looking at farms that were primarily meat vendors at farmers markets. In our 2021 research, we had 10 participating farms. Collectively, they were selling at 27 farmers markets a week. And then each time one farm collected data at a farmer's market, we call that a market day. And so when the year was over, we had collected observations from 644 market days. And like I said, these are scattered all around New York State, not concentrated just in city areas. They were also in rural areas. We saw 26,000 customer transactions amounting to $670,000 in sales and about 27,600 meat items sold. So you could just take those numbers and start to create some metrics, benchmarks for each individual farm to compare themselves against. So they were seeing about 41 customers per market, doing about $1,000 a day in sales. um, the average customer transaction size for meat vendors was about $25.50. And that was with customers essentially buying one item on average. And that item value then there, naturally was right around that $25 mark. So you could see that basically customers who were shopping with meat vendors at New York farmers markets in 2021 were buying one item worth about $25. And none of that's worth memorizing. It's just to give you a sense of what the data set looks like and how big it is, and then some takeaways. 2021 is already kind of old news, and I'm still working on my 2024 meat data. But I do have 2024 vegetable sales data. So here we had 14 farms, and on average, they're doing about 2.5 markets a week. So every farm tends to do 2.5 markets a week, meaning some are doing three, some are doing two. Um, and when we collected all the data together, it was 517 market days, amounting to about 35,000 customer transactions, $434,000 in sales, and selling about 75,000 items. So when we look at veggie vendors in 2024, we're seeing that they were seeing about almost 70 customers a day for a total average sales of $840. Customer transaction size compared to 2018 had grown. It was $12.30. Customers on average were buying two vegetable items, which were roughly valued at $6 each. So that's what we were finding in 2024. And when I
Matt,
present,
I'm
yeah,
sorry to ask a question in here. Somebody asked if you know if Google Sheets would work the same as Excel for this. I'm not familiar enough with the functionality there.
me neither. I'm not familiar with Google Sheets and if they have something like a pivot table. They probably do, but I'm not familiar, so I couldn't say.
All right, that's all we have at the
So
moment.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's a good question though. And I'm remembering there is going to be a mistake on one of these slides, but I'll just point it out when we get there. So when I present these numbers, and I had been presenting them for a few years now, and it slowly dawned on me that I needed to make the connection between what I talked about on Tuesday, marketing technique, the process of understanding what your consumer wants, and how really the results from our data analysis, we can look at those numbers. We can look at customer transaction data through the lens of consumer preferences, because what the numbers I'm going to share with you on the slides that are to follow are teaching you about consumer preferences. And so it's once again that message of the more you understand your consumer and serve them well, the more they will spend. And that's really what this is going to show us. So keep that in mind. Looking at these numbers, the actual value of any given number is not really what you need to learn when you see this. It's more, what does that teach us about consumer preference? So when we think about farmers markets, why do people go to farmers markets? Well, one big reason, and we hear it a lot, is that they're seeking farmer interaction. You could phrase that as they want to know where their food comes from. Um, but there have been surveys done, throughout the U.S. Over the past decade, and typically, they're looking for this farmer interaction to develop a relationship with the grower, to understand where their food comes from, to learn about practices. So I think we could say that the customer experience at the farmers market with any given vendor is made up of three pieces. One would be browsing, and browsing is just looking at the items, reading the price signs, right? Just having a look by yourself as a customer. Next would be talking to the farmer, asking your questions, getting recommendations, and so on. And then finally, there's the checkout. And checkout is just the business of tallying up the order and paying for your item. So I think those are the three components of customer experience. But we know they're seeking interaction. And interaction is the stories, like I said, recommendations, recipes, advice. Sometimes they have home gardens and they want to hear from the professionals. Um, or they have questions about how you produce the food. If we agree on the assumption that they seek interaction, then we can use the customer transaction size data to inform marketing practices. So the first thing that we would do to improve the customer experience is just make sure that you are using a POS system. Um, we used a POS system to collect data, and a conclusion from that data analysis is to understand your consumer, you should be using a POS system. And yeah, I hear some pushback, from friends that are farms that sell at farmers markets, and often they say, it'll take too long. I don't want to inconvenience my customers. If you're unfamiliar with using a POS, you can really fumble and it will feel awkward and it will feel like it takes too long. But once you get used to using it, you can actually check out your customers faster than without one. And that's the report. I don't have data, but I have a lot of anecdotes from farms that adopted POS and reported to me, just a few weeks in, now I can take care of my customers faster than I used to. Because the point is, you want to make the checkout process go very quickly because that should leave more time for interaction. And we tend to think about farmer interaction and the checkout being blended into one event. But if you can think about making the checkout faster and simpler, you're actually going to have more time left for interaction. So to use a POS system and use it well, program the POS with all your products and prices, record every customer transaction, including cash sales. So um, you don't pay any fees when you run a cash transaction through a POS system. Um, but that sale is recorded. So the POS company is going to issue you a 1099-K. And I know that some farms have expressed concern about that. But what I'd say is the benefit of collecting that data is so valuable that you should just record all your transactions. If you start leaving cash transactions out, you don't really have a valuable data set. It's worth the time to collect that data and use it to improve farm viability and, like I said, the performance of the farmers market channel by getting more dollars out of those hours. Customers are used to these things, so you're not really going to be putting them out. Once you get used to it and you're using it quickly, they're used to seeing it. And you can eliminate things like paper notes, notebooks, keeping hash marks of how many customers you had on paper, or even using a calculator. Calculators take more keystrokes than a POS system that's set up correctly. And I have had some success with farms who were reluctant to adopt the technology. One that I'm thinking of is a good friend, and she really didn't want to use POS, but it was 2018 and we were piloting this research. And I actually gave her an undergrad student as an intern to help. But 2 weeks into the project, she said to me, how were we ever not doing this? 2 weeks in, she became familiar with it. She saw the data coming out the other side, and she just thought, wow, how could we have ever operated without doing this? Another one that was reluctant to use it, it took him about 2 months, but 2 months in, he reported, I can actually I see that I can check out my customers faster, and that was his primary concern. So, how can you improve the customer experience at a farmer's market? I would actually suggest using a POS system will do that, and that's going to be valuable for your farm. Okay, this is another vendor quote. Um, This guy, I don't really know him well, but I was encouraging him to record all transaction as POS system. And then he texted me about 2 months later and he said, I'm using it at the farmer's market. I love it. Every farmer should use this. It's great to see at the end of the day what sold well without having to guess. And this guy's actually at a very busy New York City farmer's market. I need to mute for just a moment and I'll be right back.
Understood. How many of you have a POS system? Can you give a thumbs up or in the reaction button or in the chat? And if you do you use Square or something else?
Way to go, Megan, with the question.
Hey, we know how to pivot in extension, Matt.
Way to pivot.
I understand. I'm on it.
So yeah, Square does show up as the most commonly used one. Um, I always worry that I sound like I'm a spokesman for Square, which, as extension, we're we're not pushing private companies, but it is really user friendly. It's very easy to learn, um, and it's got a competitive credit card processing fee, and yeah, it's really interesting. Most people seem to be using Square. Thank you all for replying. I think that's awesome. Yeah, so the you can get different card readers now. I think they have the one where you can just tap. But anyway, yeah, it's awesome to hear what people are using, and thanks for giving me that quick break. I'm gonna keep going now.
Anytime, you just give me a signal, we'll do it again if we need
Will do.
to.
So so the first piece of sort of advice was to just actually use the system, and now the rest is informed by data collected through using a system. So our second piece of advice is to accept multiple payment forms. And it's 2025, and I think post COVID, a lot of farms are now accepting multiple payments, meaning credit cards. Back in 2018, when we piloted this, especially most vegetable growers, were not yet accepting credit cards or really willing to accept credit cards. But we found, so I'm not going to talk about a regression model in depth, but there's a really detailed statistical model that we fed let's say those 36,000 transactions into. And then we look at different variables in that model and if they are statistically significant. So what I'm going to share with you here, this $3.07 is a statistically significant result from a statistical model that controls for other factors. And so what it found was that when people paid with a credit card with vegetable growers, they spent on average $3.07 more than those paying with cash. So you can definitely get more money from your customers by accepting multiple payment forms. And in the case of the vegetable study, about 32% of the transactions were paid with card. We see a higher percent when it comes to meat farms because the item values are higher. We had a farm that was accepting credit cards, but it turns out they didn't even have a sign. And so, through a conversation with them, we said, "Hey, you really need to put up a clear sign that tells people that you accept cards." And when they did, we had a start date for when they put that sign up, and we analyzed their data before the sign and after. And we found that after the sign went up, they were actually getting more customers per day, more credit card usage, a higher value for what credit cards added to transactions above cash, and there's one other factor, but it had a really positive impact. So make sure that customers know you do accept credit cards, and in some cases, at some markets, you might be the only, let's say, vegetable producer who's accepting credit cards, and that certainly means that those customers who don't have cash on them are going to shop with you. What this number teaches, this $3.07, teaches is that consumers don't have cash and they find it convenient to pay with credit card or Apple Pay or Google Pay, right? So we can look at the number and it's teaching something, but the concept is accept multiple payment forms to add convenience for your consumer. Also, we'll say this slide should get updated because Square just announced this week that their fee system is now 15 cents plus 2.6%. So it has changed just a little bit, but you're still going to have more gain than you will fee when it comes to credit card processing fees. Now we're going to talk about customer density, which we might also call busyness. So when we were looking at this data, we became curious about what happens to customer spending when a farm has a long line at their stall and they get really busy. I could imagine a scenario where customer spending goes up because of long lines, but I could also imagine a scenario where customer spending falls with long lines. So what the statistics told us is that again, across 36,000 transactions, uh, when customer density increases or busyness increases, then customer transaction size actually falls. And this 27 cents is the error that I wanted to point out. It's actually 50 cents. Um, So it shouldn't say 27, it should say 50. But again, I think the actual number isn't the lesson, but the concept is. So when you get busy at a farmer's market, customer spending begins to drop during those busy periods. And the way that we got at this value was to observe any given transaction. So the one red line that's centered right over the 00, that's a given transaction. And then we would look 2.5 minutes before that transaction and 2.5 minutes after. If another transaction occurred in that 5 minute window, we found that both transactions were 50 cents smaller than the average customer transaction size. When a third one pops up, this is compounding. So now they're all going to be $1 lower. So the more customers you add in that 5 minute period, statistically over the big data set, the more that customer spending drops. What does that teach us? What's the lesson? Well, we already said that we have assumed customers are coming to farmers markets for lots of reasons, but a key reason is interaction with the farmer. And when you get busy, they're not getting that interaction, and so that has an impact on spending. Maybe it's that you're not getting to recommend an item or tell them how to prepare an item. But basically, when they're not getting as much interaction, it hurts spending. It's not to say that they're making a conscious decision like, oh, if I don't have time to talk to this guy, I'm going to buy less. It's just that that's the net effect, over the large data set. So there are some ways to address busyness, what we're going to call busyness. One would be the way you arrange your stall, and another would be staffing. Before I hop off of this slide, I just want to make sure that I explained it clearly and folks generally understand, or if anyone has a question about busyness.
Oh, this is a good one. Is passing the fee on to the customer, the credit card processing fee, something you can pre-set up in Square so it automatically does that?
Okay, this is a great topic. So what I would suggest, and this is based on my personal opinion, not data, is that you include credit card processing fees in your pricing. So at 15 cents per transaction plus 2.6%, for example, let's just call that 3% for the ease of discussion. I would be sure that I've got that 3% fee included in all my pricing that I just put out to the public. Um, that's just like any other business cost. There are folks who would prefer to put up a sign that says, if you're paying by card, we're going to add 2.6% to your bill. And there are folks who put up a sign that says, we're offering a cash discount. So they might offer a 3% cash discount. Again, all their pricing includes in their mind and their business accounting for the credit card fee and then offering 3% off or 2.5% off if you pay with cash. So there's different ways to approach it. Um, but one person's opinion is I would bake it into my pricing, just the way you bake the cost of fuel and everything else on your farm, all the cost of running your business into your pricing. All right, so moving on from busyness, I'm going to start to address with stall layout and staffing how you might work on busyness, try to reduce busyness. So one is the stall layout, and up here in upstate New York, I'm like 4.5 hours outside of New York City. So if you're not familiar with our state, don't imagine that I'm in the city. A lot of the farmers markets locally, you'll find this kind of stall design where the farmer puts their checkout station, their scale, and their cash box and their POS system in the center of a U-shaped market stall. And then customers come around the outside of that stall to shop and to pay. And so a lot of times those farmers will say, I can't use a POS system because I'm too busy and I'm helping, 3 or 4 customers at once. But that's sort of as a result of this design. So I think there are some weaknesses with this style if you're getting busy at markets. One is that customers don't really know who's next because they're all standing there coming at you from different sides, so they're sort of vying for position. Um, you're forced to help multiple customers at once because you're in the center like that. And you're also holding customers outside of your space. And I'll show you what I mean in contrast in a moment. And then finally, I think browsing isn't as good because customers might miss items. So that's the customer who, begins to check out with you, and then they spy on the other side of the table for some reason that there's tomatoes. Like, oh wait, you have tomatoes too? Hold on, right? So they stop mid transaction to do some additional browsing. So I think that's some of the weaknesses that create higher levels of busyness with this stall design. Alternatively, there's this stall design or variations on it. And as we move down closer to New York City and the lower Hudson Valley, where farmers markets do tend to be a lot busier than up here where I am, we more and more we see this stall design. So I think the key factors with this are that the checkout station is at the end. Just putting that scale, cash box, and POS system at the end of the table, just people just naturally understand the flow through your market stall and that they're going to check out at the end. Now, if you have two people working, then the farmer can actually float, providing customer interaction and restocking, while another person is just doing the business of checkout. Also, I like this design. Like when I go to a really busy market, like in New York City, because it allows customers to come in out of, let's say, the foot traffic or the weather. They come inside your tent or your stall to shop with you. So it's a little, I don't know, it feels inviting. It feels like a piece of an aspect of hospitality. And so, yeah, the checkout station is clear, the flow is more clear. And so you see this at really busy markets. Think it allows farms to check out their customers faster. So here's a picture from a farmer's market. This is probably 2 hours outside of New York City, but a really busy town. A lot of New Yorkers like to come up on the weekend and go to the farmers markets. Um, and you can see how they have their layout. So the checkout station is down here, which is at the end of that table. Customers walk by this table first, they enter, and then they walk down this row past all the items and they check out. So that's one example. Another one is this one. This market is even closer to New York City, a very busy market, and say you see the same layout. So this is an idea based on what I've observed on how to reduce busyness. Speeding up the checkout process leaves more time for farmer interaction. You can check these people out quickly. Maybe again you have two people working. And that's the second suggestion to reduce busyness is look at your busiest periods and have additional staff available. Your sales data, if you're collecting it through a POS system, has those timestamps. So you'll be able to see when you're busiest, just like looking at the concentration in any given, hour. And you might just have to add a second staff person for the first few hours of a market. But then having two checkout stations would help reduce busyness. In fact, compared to having one checkout station, it cuts busyness in half. You can calculate how much it would cost you to add additional staff and then the projected sales gain. So you could do sort of a cost benefit analysis on adding staff. So if you get really busy, think about using some of these ideas. The next statistic that's interesting out of this data analysis is that customer transaction size drops with each passing hour. So we would expect each transaction to be, on average, 50 cents smaller in the second hour than in the first. In other words, your top spending customers tend to shop in the first hour of a market, whether that's a 3 or 4 p.m. market or a 8 or 9 a.m. market, because like I said, we just coded every transaction as first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour. But with each passing hour, customer transaction size is dropping. So once again, instead of looking at the 51 cents so much, think about the implications. Your top spending customers come early in the market, so be sure to be there on time, completely set up and ready to sell when the market begins. In other words, don't be late. We definitely see farms that are rolling in late. They're still setting up during the official market hours, and so they're missing out on their biggest spenders of the day. If we think about this, the implications, it's that early shoppers spend the most. So we can start to try to understand those early shoppers. What is it that they're after? We we think that they're after the best selection of items. You know, if they know you're going to sell out of eggs or bacon or tomatoes early in the market, they want to be there early so they can get those things. They want the widest selection, the freshest products. And when it comes to fruit and vegetables, certainly freshness is an issue. And maybe it's just to beat the crowd that's going to come to the farmer's market later on. So this is what we think brings them in early. I want to talk a moment about how much early shoppers contribute to your average daily sales. If you think about that your first hour has your top spending customers, what's their total contribution to your day? Well, this is real data from one farm, a vegetable farm, selling at a farmer's market. And what I've done is just taken all of their customers and sorted them into spending groups, regardless of what time the transaction occurred. So we have customers who spent $5 or less. And in this day where there were a total of 210 customers, 120 of those customers spent $5 or less. Then we have a group that spent from 5 up to almost 10, right? And then a group from 10 to 20 and so on. And if you look at the total contribution to daily sales of any one of these spending groups, the biggest contribution was from customers who spent between $10 and $20. Just 29 customers collectively gave the farm $414 in sales that day versus 120 customers spending $5 or less collectively contributed 347. So what I'm showing you here is you can't afford to miss out on your top spending customers by being late to the market. You really need to be there on time. If that's when those 29 people are going to shop, you want that contribution to daily sales because then, customer spending is going to fall with each passing hour. Another way that we could try to improve daily sales is thinking about the implications of what early customers want and assuming that late customers want the same things, right? It stands to reason that later shoppers would also like a broad selection and fresh product, right? So to try to increase sales later in the day when we know they're going to be falling, we want to make sure that we are well stocked. We still have a lot of these items as much as possible. We're refreshing and restocking, keeping it looking bountiful and fresh. If you have vegetables in the heat, misting them with water so that everything still looks great. I think by taking what we understand about early shoppers and considering, well, late shoppers probably want that too, we have a chance to boost late afternoon sales. And on that note, another way to improve daily sales is to stay in your booth, actively engaging customers all the way until the end of the market. I think farms that see their sales fall through the course of the market hours, they know that that's what they're gonna, what they're gonna see on any given day, and so the temptation comes to go socialize with other farmers, to walk around and do some bartering, and to leave the market stall. But if you leave your stall, you can't make sales. And so, an easy way, perhaps, to increase late market sales is to be sure that you're staying in your booth and you're still engaging consumers that are walking by. Maybe this is the time that you offer free samples. Maybe you put out different signage and try to engage those people that are still wandering around into checking out your stuff and making a purchase. Could be a way to bump sales during those slowest hours. How else can we improve earning at a farmer's market? We can look at customer item counts. So a lot of one item customers, if we could get them to buy a second item, we would bring up our average customer spending. So In the 2024 vegetable study, uh, we found that people were buying about two items. So this is another typo. Sorry, I was updating from 2021 data to 2024, and I see that I missed a few. But basically, think about those customers who do just buy one item and try to get them to buy a second item. You can do this by suggesting the other item to them or by bundling your items, um, meaning, offering them just at a price that says two for and then the price. So it's just the suggestion of buying two. Could also improve daily earnings by raising prices on really popular and fast moving items. Um, Eggs are one, even before the current situation with eggs. I would meet farms and they would sort of, I feel like maybe it was bragging rights to say, you know, when we go to the farmers market, we're so popular that we sell out of eggs in the first 15 minutes. And that always makes me think, well, clearly your prices on eggs are too low, right? If you can sell out of something very, very quickly, then you can look for an opportunity to raise that price, frankly, to slow some of those customers down. I'm just going to skip ahead here. Another way to consider improving earnings at the market is to, well, there's some creative ways. I'm sorry, I'm just having a brain fog. Um, One is to look at your item value. So let's say I have carrot images here because that's the cartoony image that I could find, but I really think about garlic, bulbs of garlic. If you can increase the product size without changing the price, you will actually get customers to spend more. So when we talk about garlic, if you're selling single heads of garlic for $1, that means that you're giving customers the opportunity to shop with you, but only spend $1. And frankly, they're also going to be creating busyness, right? They're going to be creating customer density. But if you put three heads of garlic into a pint container, you can still charge $1 per head, but now you're asking them to spend $3 with you. So by setting your package sizes strategically, you can also increase customer spending. This is not a price increase; it's still $1 per head, but you're making bigger, slightly larger bundles to ask the customer to spend more. Another time I've encountered this is that I had a farm that was selling arugula in quarter pound bags. And they actually contacted me uh, saying that, Matt, it's such a hassle to wash and pack and weigh these little quarter pound bags of arugula. What do we do? And I was like, well, who said they have to be a quarter pound, right? You're in charge of this, so you can make them bigger bags, right? Half-pound bags. So you can set your product sizes, and that's a way to influence customer spending without increasing prices, or even getting a one-item customer to buy additional. It's just changing the size. And then again, you could also come back to pricing. You could frankly just increase prices, which, is the time of inflation that we just went through. Customers are used to seeing price increases. And I think, while a lot of farmers are shy about price increases, this inflation situation that we had um, kind of gives them some confidence. When it comes to price increases, I want to share that we're reporting prices at farmers markets and grocery stores here in New York, and that's accessible to anyone. So, like I said, it is a different state, but if you want to just get a reference point for how things, what kinds of prices you're seeing at farmers markets and grocery stores in New York, you can check out, you can scan this QR, you can go to our site, farmersmarketresearch.cornell.edu, and you can find price reports. And I want to say a few more things about those price reports. I'll actually go to the site and give you an example, but I want to tell you, when we do grocery store prices, we're presenting what I would call a simple average. So we read the price signs at the grocery store, and in this example, we see ground beef. We see one says $5 a pound, one says $8 a pound, one says $2 a pound. So we take the 5, 8, and 2, we add them up, we divide by 3, right? That's a simple average. So you could conclude that the average price for ground beef is $5 a pound. That's how we report grocery store prices. But because we have this POS data, when we report farmers market prices, we're actually doing what's called a weighted average. So we take into consideration the pounds that were sold, because the only way a price gets into our data set is if it's from a customer transaction, which means, excuse me, somebody bought that item. So we add quantity sold, and we can sum up all these uh, pounds and dollars, and then divide by the total, and we come up with a weighted average price. And I think this is a little bit more valuable if you're going to use price reports as a reference point for price setting, because weighted averages reflect the volume that was sold. So the weighted average price using $5 a pound, $8 a pound, $2 a pound, but understanding how much of each was sold comes out to $4 a pound. So that's a little bit better than just the grocery store sign price report. Of course, when it comes to grocery stores, we don't have sales volume data. So, we can only present a simple average. But we are producing both price reports on our website, and you can check those out. Also, want to say that I wrote a 4-page paper that you can find on our website. It's called Enhance Shopper Experience, Earn More at the Farmers Market. And it's really a lot of the content of this discussion that we just had, talking about how you can interpret what we're getting out of the data to understand consumer preferences and then implement practices with the goal of increasing customer spending. Before I totally quit, I just want to hop over to the site and show you where you'll find these different resources. So are you seeing our website, the Farmers Market Research Project?
Yes, we are.
All right, cool. Um, Under resources, you'll find this paper that I just wrote. Like I said, you could check that out. It just came out in December. And we have some other resources if you want to learn about setting up and using Square. We have some instructional videos and some talks through our parts of our project. But then under price reports, we update these monthly. So you can find grocery store reports. Again, it's New York State, but it includes, Walmart, Target, a few different grocery chains in our area, Aldi, Trader Joe's, things like that. You can see our monthly reports. We're about to publish our February ones, so they'll be going up. And then also our farmers market price reports. So again, grocery store, simple average, farmers market, weighted average. If you scroll down here to additional price reports, um, you can go to the archive of price reports, and that's where we have our summertime farmers market reports. Because if you go look at our produce price reports from January and February, they're pretty bleak. We don't have a lot of crops up here, and with the participating farms, we don't have a lot of sales. But you can go through the archive and you can find stuff, vegetable price report from August or July and things like that, and that will give you a more full list of crops. On all of our price reports, we identify products as either being certified organic or not. We don't get into any additional claims, but just sort things out by organic and not organic. So you can find the prices in all these reports. I hope that's helpful. I think whatever bug I have has clogged my brain a little bit, but we got through most of it without too much trouble. So if there's questions, I'm happy to try to take questions now too.
We know it's extremely difficult to think and speak and everything else when when everything is clogged up. So we
Yeah,
appreciate the extra effort it took to be with us today, Matt.
I feel a little bad because I definitely stumbled on a few slides where I just couldn't think, but uh, oh
That
well.
uh, sounded sounded great, and I love how you connect the information to how folks can apply it on their farms, and I think that's really valuable. And hopefully, you've got some creative juices flowing and some important things to think about here. Well, I'm just watching the chat a little bit. While
Yeah.
I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put up the the PowerPoint here. We hope that you will join us again on Monday. We're going to have several of the regulators, I guess, from from the state of Tennessee, the Department of Agriculture, Consumer and Industry Services that does regulation for food manufacturing. The Tennessee Department of Health, which has regulation over sampling, and the food service establishments, including the Farmers Market Food Unit bill that or law that is relatively new, and then the Tennessee Department of Revenue to answer questions about business licenses and sales tax. So you can use this link here, and I sent an email about it the other day, and I'll put it in the chat again. If you have specific questions that you would like me to pose to our speakers on Monday, I would love to have those before I come to work Friday morning, tomorrow mornings, because I'm going to sort those out and send them ahead of time so those gentlemen know what to expect and how to prepare. We'll also take questions in the chat box that day, but this will help us to sort out questions that we aren't going to answer, like questions on hemp, because those rules are being worked on right now and they don't really have any answers, and to combine questions so we don't duplicate a lot. So I'll put that in the chat right quick. And then you should also have that in an email. And then finally, we would ask that you would take just a minute or two and complete the evaluation. We're going to share data with Matt from this for his contributions to this webinar series, which have been wonderful. And then we'll also use it to plan for next year as well. So and finally, we use that to kind of record attendance for the TAEP educational credit that the Department of Agriculture is offering for agritourism, fruit and vegetable, and value added product sector in the producer diversification part of that program. And Matt has shared his email so generously and his time with us so generously. We love technology when it works and allows you to join us from New York. And now I hope you can get some hot tea and maybe a nap. And
Yes, that's on my mind. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. We appreciate all of your efforts, and I look forward to seeing you in Nashville in a few weeks.
All right, same. Thanks. We'll see you.
Bye.